Good evening. Welcome to the July 8th, 2024 meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. The meeting is being conducted with in-person and remote participation. We'll begin by calling the roll of the board members. Ms. Bresnahan.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
I'm here.
Mr. Wood.
Present.
Associate member, Mr. Dalamole.
Here.
Did I get that right?
That was very good. Thank you.
See if I remember that next time.
Yeah.
And Mr. Robbins is present. Also present with us remotely are staff, our planner, Fiona Coughlin,
Present.
office manager, Natalia Allward.
Present.
Very good. We'll begin the meeting with just a reminder of the protocol for public participation, which we kind of sometimes take it for granted, but just in case there's anybody here who's unfamiliar with it, the remote participation by the public for the public comment agenda item, public hearings, and any other matter for which the board allows public participation will be by raising your hand if you're in the room and using the Zoom raise hand feature if you're on Zoom, or you can use the Zoom Q&A feature. I prefer to see the raise hand so we can all hear you. If you do raise your hand on Zoom, you will be enabled at an appropriate point to enter the meeting to make a comment or ask a question. If you ask a question via Q&A, the question will be read into the record at an appropriate time and answered. In all cases, whether in person or remote, we ask that you identify yourself by name and address for the record. Proceed with public input. If there is anybody who has a matter they wish to bring to the board's attention that is not already on the agenda for tonight's meeting, now would be the time to do so by raising your hand and asking to speak. I see no raised hands in the room. I see no raised hands on Zoom. We'll proceed into our action items. Justin has been feeling somewhat ill and is remote. And he says he hopes to stay through the whole meeting, but he can't guarantee it. So if the board's agreeable, we need Justin's vote for the two special permit decisions, and if I'd like to take those out of order, if that's acceptable to everybody. We'll begin with the special permit and site plan approval at 56 Aspen Avenue. The draft decision was in your meeting materials. Fiona, did you have anything you wanted to say about that? And if anybody in the board has any comments or questions about it, now would be the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not have anything to add or have any questions for the board. Can you, can you see my my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I have the draft decision pulled up. So I think it might be most appropriate to just, hopefully the board had adequate time to review, and if there's any comments or edits that I need to make before finalizing this, I will do so, and will initiate the follow-up paperwork should this be agreeable.
Anybody have any thoughts on this? When my review of it, I did not see anything that I thought needed to be modified. So if no one has any comments on it, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the draft decision as written.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the draft decision.
And I'll second it.
Any discussion of the motion? Implicitly approving it as written means granting any waiver requests that might be in there and approving all the conditions and approving the permit.
Favorable findings on.
Findings. Approving everything in therein. With no further discussion, we'll take a vote. Ms. Bresnahan?
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. I neglected to mention at the outset of the meeting that our fifth board member, Mr. Venkatraman, is traveling and unable to participate in the meeting. So I declare this vote carried unanimously by a vote in 4 in favor and 0 against. The next special permit decision is 1 Bedford Drive, another accessory apartment special permit.
Yes, so I'll go pull that up as well. Sorry, my mouse is not cooperating with me. 1 second here. All right, so similar to 56 Aspen, which we just voted on, a pretty standard accessory apartment decision. If the board has any specific questions or edits that they'd like me to incorporate, I'll be happy to do so. Yeah, other than that, I really didn't have any questions for the board or anything that I felt I needed clarification on.
I had one comment on finding F5,
Okay.
that one could read that to say that the special permit is for the proposed construction of the addition of the house. Should be clarified that the special permit is specifically for the accessory apartment within the proposed addition.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that that's clear throughout, that we're focusing on the accessory apartment only and not the addition. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments on the draft decision? Any questions, suggestions? Hearing none, Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the draft decision.
As with adjustments as discussed.
Yeah.
I will interpret the motion to be to find favorably on all the findings, grant the requested waivers, approve all the conditions in the draft as modified as per the discussion.
Exactly what I said.
Second.
Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, we'll put this to a vote. Ms. Bresnahan.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Declare the motion carried unanimously. And thank you for sticking with us this far, Justin. I will now let's do the one other thing that requires a vote right away, and that would be the draft decision on the scenic road permit at 44 Adams.
Okay, and here we are. So again, I'm feeling like a broken record, but I don't have anything specific for the board. Just willing to incorporate comments and suggestions. And if I miss anything or you notice anything, please let me know. But this one was also a pretty straightforward scenic road permit, as we discussed at the hearing. It's virtually impossible to have the driveway opening without a breach in the stone wall. So yeah, other than that, no questions or comments. And if you have anything you'd like me to add, just let me know.
Yep. The only comment I had on this was a number of findings referred to SRR, section this and section that, section 6 point this and that. SRR in our work most often is understood to mean subdivision rules and regulations, but in this case, SRR stands for scenic road regulations, and somewhere no later than the first time the abbreviation SRR is used, it should be spelled out so that it's clear that SRR here means subdivision. Here I go. Scenic roads regulations. I think it's pretty well. It's sort of implicitly understood, but these are the kind of details I like to see spelled out so there's no ambiguity.
Yep, absolutely. I will make those changes. It is definitely better to be as clear as possible.
Any other comments on this? Any other suggestions? If there's nothing else from the board on this, the chair would entertain a motion to grant the scenic road permit with all the findings, favorable findings and waivers and everything else as drafted.
So moved.
As drafted with the changes noted during discussion.
Exactly what.
Seconded.
Exactly what I intended.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Bresnahan.
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. The decision is approved. And there is actually one more action item. There were two more action items. I'll note that the first action item, the bond/surety approval for Abbey Woods, is not ready for the board's action as of yet, because it's still under review by town council. So we will take this up at a subsequent meeting whenever it's ready for the board's action. And finally, we have an action item, an approval not required plan at 12 and 8 Morgan Drive. Very briefly, that is to combine two lots into one.
Just Mr. Chair, I'll give a really speedy overview. Most of this information is already in my memo that was uploaded to the record, but just to clarify that this is a pretty standard A&R application. I will share the application here. It's very small at the moment. Scroll down. So the applicant is looking to essentially combine the lot lines of number 12. It's been a little bit since I looked at this one. Bear with me for a moment here. Okay, yeah. So we're going. Some lot lines will be removed, and the parcel number 8 will be merged with number 12 Morgan Drive. The intent is that the 8 Morgan Drive will not be buildable. The applicant has not expressed any intention to build on that lot. As we can see, there's a good portion of that area is wetlands. So it was highly unlikely that any building would be going on anyway. But other than that, we did go back and forth a bit with the applicant, who I do not believe there is anybody here on behalf of the applicant or the engineer.
Yeah, the applicant is here as an attendee, Brian Marino.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
This is Jim Sullivan from Gary and Hellnon as well, if you need me.
Very good.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So other than the what I briefly summarize, we didn't have any major concerns. Natalia, I corresponded with the applicant initially, and then I went and did another look through. In terms of compliance with Master General Law, we have no concerns. It's pretty straightforward A&R. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if the applicant would like to answer any questions, we can go from there.
Anybody on the board have any questions on this?
How many times have these lots been configured and reconfigured? About 12, 3 or 4.
Yeah, we did an A&R just last year on that reconfigured some of this, and there was an A&R way back in 2001 that created most of these lots outside the subdivision, and then there's the subdivision itself, which dates back to 1999. But anyway, we are here where we are, and this is one of the more straightforward A&Rs that I can think of.
I did provide, Mr. Chair, I did try and kind of summarize. I know there has been a lot of activity in this area recently, and I tried to give a brief overview for the board in my memo. I think this might be, we had a recent A&R application before us for the parcel that's just directly adjacent to 8 Morgan Drive. That A&R approval was attached to my memo, just for the board's reference, because that was fairly recent.
So I think I understand that you're advising us that it's okay to approve this A&R.
Yes, from the planning department's perspective, this application is satisfactory, and I would just like to include some extra additional information the board wants to know.
Was there anybody else?
Anything else from the board? A motion might be in order.
I move that we find that approval is not required and direct staff to do the appropriate paperwork.
I second.
Including authorizing staff to sign on behalf of the board.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Bresnahan,
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Wood,
Aye.
and Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. The paperwork will be issued accordingly. Yep, it's complete.
Jim, I'll coordinate with you when I'm back in tomorrow and get you what you need as soon as possible. Thank you.
Alrighty, so that concludes the action items on our agenda. We do seem to have some bills that require approval.
I move that we approve payment of the bills as
Second.
presented.
Second it.
Moved and seconded that we pay our bills. Any discussion of the motion? We generally like to see that our bills are paid.
Yes, but I think what we're doing is approving payment.
Yes.
Anyway, no discussion.
All right, with no discussion, no further discussion, Ms. Bresnahan?
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Staff can see to it that the bills get paid. We have time, actually, if we want to do a staff report. Before I forget, the public hearing for 17-27 Upton Street, the applicant has requested that to be continued to July 22nd, so we will not be, the only action we will be taking in that tonight will be to approve the applicant's request to continue. So if you're here for 1727 Upton Street, you won't hear anything from the board tonight, or anybody else. I'll mention that again at 7:30, just in case someone tunes in at 7:30 looking for that. I was supposed to announce that at the very top of the meeting, but it was off the top of my screen on my meeting notes. Okay, Fiona, do you have a staff report for us?
Yes. So continuing to work away, obviously, we've been kind of primarily focusing on the applications that are in front of us and the coordination that's involved, given the scale and complexity. So that's been the primary focus, as well as for attending our regular meetings for the boards and commissions that we staff. So continuing to provide technical assistance to not only the planning board, but the Affordable Housing Trust, the Master Plan Working Group, and other committees as needed. Beyond the kind of the regular day-to-day, we're continuing to look into grant opportunities where we can. It's been a little bit of a wind down because we currently have about 8 in rotation and 2 are pending confirmation of two we're waiting to hear if we were awarded. So it's been a little, it's been a lot of coordination and grant administration from that end. So we did kind of take our foot off the brakes for a bit there while we kind of carry out those requirements and plan for the future. Long range project coordination continues, working with CMRPC on our master plan with the Master Plan Working Group. We're meeting on a week from today on the 15th. We encourage the public to continue to attend those meetings and provide feedback. We're currently in drafting our chapters, our rough drafts of our chapters. So it's an important time to get a clean feedback from the public. So please check out the agenda. It's posted online, and all the information that you'd need to join is there, including the Zoom link. It is completely remote. We are continuing to receive responses to our assistant planner posting. I've been kind of continuing to circulate that where I can. So we're going to be coordinating with the town administrator's office to start going through the applications that we've received and hopefully get someone up and running soon. It's a very exciting time, and we can't wait. Been continuing to follow up on construction compliance tracking, making sure that projects under construction are following their special permits and other permits issued by this board. Been doing great. Jeff Walsh of Graves Engineering is very good. We'll go out on site visits with us and help in that regard. Continuing to stay on top of the subsidized housing inventory and submitting information when we can. Building department is really starting to close out in some of these building permits and COs, hitting some major milestones. So we send those in. So that was definitely took up a good portion of the day today, actually. And other than that, we're trying to get a little bit better about, information sharing where possible, with just Natalia and I in the office. We sometimes, we try our best to coordinate, but, any suggestions that any of the board members of the public have about how we can kind of better utilize the website or make it more clear, we're happy to incorporate that feedback. And if the board doesn't have any other questions, I did have a couple of comments about what is going to be in correspondence, Mr. Chair. So I think I'll stop staff report there. And
Any questions to Fiona before we touch on correspondence? So, correspondence is the next agenda item. Anything caught anybody's eye in correspondence? Fiona just said she had a couple of comments on it.
yes, Justin, I saw your hand was up, so we might say the same thing. So you go first.
Well, my one question, which was definitely not the same thing you're going to say, but I never realized that some of our SHI was confidential. I'm just curious if you know, like, one sentence why the group homes are confidential, because I'm curious.
Yes, so those are Department of Mental Health and Department of Public Health housing that for I don't know all the technicalities, but I know that it's correlates to HIPAA, and
Okay.
we cannot that information cannot be shared. So you'll often see that.
Good enough for me.
Yeah, it's
This is the first time I actually noticed it, so I was curious.
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, if I may, so I wanted to just have a discussion with the board about, there is a lot in correspondence, so about there was a notice sent to the planning department about for the right of first refusal for the Robinson property, which I am going to get there eventually. Bear with me here.
There were over 100 pages of correspondence, which is
Yes, there was
somewhat
a lot
more than we normally see.
Right. I'm sorry, bear with me there, getting there slowly, but I wanted to just have a discussion with the board about the interest in, following up on that, maybe writing a letter of support. I know the town does own land surrounding Silver Lake and has been kind of working to move it, buy all of those parcels if possible, so that we can have complete access around the lake. I just, it's something to consider. We can put on a future agenda to vote on a letter of support, but I just wanted to run that by the board and to put that plug in your ear, and because we do have a window of opportunity and we want to make sure we act efficiently. If I can ever get there, geez, Louise.
Yeah, Justin's hand is up.
Yeah, I'm well aware this. At least the CPC as a whole is extremely interested in supporting a land acquisition when this actually did come up. So I think it is something that we should definitely put on our next agenda to vote on, assuming that we're within the period for our vote to matter for that.
Yeah, the town has 120 days to exercise its option here, so we're well within the window at this point. But to follow up on Justin's point, these are the last two Robinson parcels around Silver Lake that we have been waiting for a long time for these to become available potentially to the town. So it's long been. I mean, they rank pretty high on our parcel prioritization project that we just completed a few months ago. But even before then, we've had our eyes on these parcels for a very long time. And I see. I'll second Justin's suggestion that we put this on our agenda for the next board meeting to discuss and take a vote if we so choose.
Great. And then just one other thing to note, so every year the school department coordinates with myself to get a kind of snapshot of current development that's going on. So that information is uploaded. What I sent, so NESDEC sent us a memo. There was some inaccuracies in that memo. So I issued a response memo to their organization to clarify where Grafton is at. And if the board is interested or wants to talk further about why that was included, happy to do so. But it is the housing count that we typically report out. So the schools can understand what they need to ask for funding going forward, and kind of can plan, for increases in enrollment, and whatnot. So that was the only other item in the correspondence I wanted to highlight and just talk through with the board if they had any questions or wanted to delve deeper into that. This is my response memo here. I'll rattle it all off to you. But so, and with that, I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair, for both items.
Anything else anybody has in correspondence? If not, we still have 3 minutes before our public hearing
Which
starts.
is just enough time.
Do we have any reports from planning board representatives on town committees and CMRPC?
No.
I don't hear anything. I don't have the one other committee that I'm a representative of the board on has not had any meetings since our last meeting, so I have nothing to report.
I suppose it was, since the last meeting, we had the annual meeting, and mostly a lot of awards were given away and people were congratulated, but it was a big turnout.
And I see Fiona's hand raised on Zoom.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to respond. There was a question in the Q&A. But I can wait until this item is finished, and then I can answer that. The question came in while we were still on the previous agenda item, so I just wanted to make sure that it was acknowledged and that I answer it for the record.
Okay, so yeah, I think we're done with the agenda item. So yes, let's take the Q&A and put that on the record.
Sure, absolutely. So there was a question about assigned to make an appointment with the planning department. So we did have for a time there a sign up because it's been so busy, and we were only a staff of 2, and with people going on vacation, getting sick or what have you, we've been trying to encourage members of the public to give us a heads up when they're coming in and try and make an appointment. There's also been, it's a lot of Zoom meetings. We're going out on site visits. We're having meetings with other staff, et cetera, et cetera. So just how the general craziness. We try our best to be as available as possible, but it is always, I feel like frustrating for members of the public, as well as applicants to come and someone's not available to meet with them and give them the time and attention they deserve. But we did modify that sign to just let folks know, just obviously could continue to feel free to stop by. Appointments are encouraged, but we'll do our best to always try and service people as they drop in. Just trying to be more courteous of people's time, and but I can understand how that might be a little bit misconstrued from a customer service standpoint. So we did change the language in that sign. But happy to remove it altogether. I just always wanted. It's just been so crazy and busy that we're trying to balance it all. But so yeah, I just wanted to clarify that for the board and answer the question. So thanks very much for that question.
Okay, it is now 7:30. And it's time for our public hearings to start. And once again, I will remind anybody who is here expecting to hear about the 17 to 27 Upton Street project that the applicant has requested a continuation of that to our next meeting, July 22nd. So we will not be acting on the 1727 Upton Street this evening, except to grant the applicant's continuation request.
Which I'm ready to do.
Hmm?
I'm ready.
And in fact, if we want to grant that request, to take that out of order, I think,
Yes, I move that we grant the applicant's written request to continue the hearing until July 22nd, 2024 at 7:30.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Bresnahan.
Aye.
Mr. Hassan.
Aye.
Mr. Wood still with us?
Yes.
He is. Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye. Oh yeah, I saw your name right in front of me and I didn't see it. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Ask my wife. I can be looking right at something and she'll tell you I don't see it when I'm looking right at it. Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. The 1727 hearing is continued to the meeting 2 weeks from tonight. With that, we have our first public hearing this evening is a request for modification of special permit SP 2015-14.1 and site plan approval for 18-22 Donahue Lane. This being a new public hearing, we'll begin with the reading of the legal notice.
Pursuant to sections 1.5.7 and 1.3.3 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, July 8th, 2024, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in the conference room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider an application for modification of special permit and site plan approval, request to modify the decision of the Grafton Planning Board, recorded at the Worcester District Registry of Deeds as Book 69051, page 191, to clarify and update the permitted operations and conditions on property located at 18 and 22 Donahue Lane, shown as Grafton's Assessor Map 26, Lots 2 and 2A. Said property is located in Office Light Industrial, OLI, zoning district, and applicant owner is 18 and 22 Donahue Lane, LLC. A copy of this application plan is available for public inspection at the Planning Department during regular business hours or on the Town of Grafton website on the Planning Department Developments project page. The end.
Thank you. So we have a couple people here to speak on behalf of the applicant. Excuse me. Fiona, would you like to begin by sort of giving you an introduction to the project, then we'll let the applicants begin their presentation.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did do an overview of this application and I did upload my memo into the record, but just for the board, we are looking to modify the 2015 special permit of 18 and 22 Donahue Lane, which is currently quite limited in what it allows. It's basically storage of equipment. So the applicant, based on correspondence with the applicant and kind of how things have been unfolding on that site, it was a suggestion to modify this permit to try and establish some enforceable parameters on behalf of the town. And also the applicant has some parameters that they would like to establish for themselves. I do list them out in my memo, so I won't go through them, and I'll give the applicant the opportunity to kind of speak to that themselves. But the board may remember that this was before us. A different application was before us last year, which was withdrawn without prejudice. This is a new application and is considered a modification of a previous special permit. So that is what we're going to be focusing on. And the applicant has, this is going to be their first hearing with us. And obviously, we have to have a dialogue, and I would like to have talk more about some of the findings that are in my memo, but I'm not going to, I'll give them the opportunity to kind of speak to that. So, I think maybe appropriate to turn it over to Matt Eckel, Fletcher Tilton, who's, I believe, representing the applicant this evening. I think I see him.
Great. Well, thank you and good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I am Matt Ecklin, attorney with Fletcher Tilton here on behalf of the applicant. With me is the applicant, Mr. Michael McCura. As mentioned, Mr. McCura has been operating his business at this location since early 2016, following the approval at that time of a special permit from this board. As Ms. Coughlin mentioned, we've had some discussions over the past 6 months or so relating to the use, relating to some complaints that the planning department was receiving, and really based upon the lack of specificity within that decision. I think it was really a case of accepting kind of the current proposal, so to speak, and just memorializing it exactly as it was written, as opposed to kind of creating some either somewhat flexible or kind of parameters that would generally be associated with a growing business. So it's listed in the special permit as an area for the storage of construction vehicles and equipment, I believe. Ms. Coughlin certainly has the exact terminology in the memo. We think it's appropriate that it's identified as an actual tangible use within the zoning bylaw, which is most akin to a contractor's yard here. That probably should have been the case back in 2016. But again, I think it was just a matter of kind of adopting what was presented in a memo and approved as such back then. We understand there are some concerns. We have heard the concerns. We believe there's a little bit of give and take that could happen here. As Ms. Coughlin mentioned, we are seeking some updates, one being that it's actually identified as a contractor's yard, two, that it would lift the restriction that the property could be rented out or subletted. That really restricts alienability and the opportunity to really use the property to its fullest. But we understand there's also been things that have changed over time, whether that's the small business growing, slight increase in traffic. I'm sure you'll hear from some people it's too loud and there's too much traffic. We're certainly open to some kind of trip monitoring or potential kind of caps on trips in and out. What that is, I think we can kind of flesh out with the board and hopefully with the abutters. We're also very willing to put hours of operation. Somehow the 2016 decision did not have that included. The 2016 decision referred to it as a kind of seasonal use in nature, but didn't restrict it as seasonally. So certainly the business itself does lend itself to the nicer months, the nicer weather months. However, it is a year-round business, so we just wanted to clarify that as well. Just to give a little bit more background on the site, it is located in an office light industrial zoning district. The properties directly to the south to us are also located in a similar district, but are primarily residential in use. The properties to the right are in an R20 zoning district and are almost entirely residential. And then the property to the left, the west and north, is an industrial zone. So it is a little bit of a hodgepodge of zoning districts as well as uses. Vehicular access to the site is from Donahue Lane, which is accessed via Worcester Street. As mentioned, the main idea here is to continue the use, but to better memorialize it and kind of set expectations that both abutters can recognize and fair enough address if anything's exceeded, and that also will give the planning department and building department a little bit more specificity on what is and isn't allowed on the property. So just to go into a little bit better detail on what we're seeking, as mentioned, we're seeking to remove that condition restricting the renting or the subletting of the property, identify a specific proposed storage area. Right now, the site has not been very active lately and does have designated areas for parking and access and storage. We actually, one of the buildings was just recently removed, which I'm not sure if that was mentioned in the memo, but has been removed with a valid a demo permit. We'd like to establish hours of operation and discuss potential mitigation measures for the abutting properties. We did not file an official site plan to be reviewed and approved because we really wanted to invite open dialogue, whether that means fencing around the perimeter of the property, whether that means some kind of natural sound and visual mitigation, whether that's a berm and fencing on top of it. There does remain a lot of natural vegetation right now. Our proposed storage area to the closest property line is about 125 feet. So there is that natural separation, but we understand that our use does differ. greatly from residential, and we want to be as sensitive as we can to abutters while also knowing that we are an office light industrial with a valid special permit. So the long and the short of it is we're here after discussions with the planner and the planning department to try to come to a resolution, which again kind of gives the applicant better parameters of what's going to be permitted in the future, as well as abutters, so we're all kind of on a level playing field. So with that, I'm happy to take a moment and take any questions from the board. Mr. McCure is here to answer any questions about his current operations, and certainly we want to work towards a meaningful resolution here.
I'll make one observation, and that is that it's quite possible that in 2016 we did not have a definition of contractor's yard in the zoning bylaw, which may be an explanation for why the use is not very well defined. I know we added that definition not too many years ago. I'd have to look it up to see exactly when, but in any case, effectively, it sounds like it has been operating more or less as a contractor's yard. But that would add some clarity to the special permits.
I think that certainly makes sense, Mr. Chairman, and again, just an opportunity here to clarify that moving forward and set the other parameters. But
any questions, comments from the board?
You and I were on that, weren't we?
Yes, we were on the board at the time.
And I swear there was stuff before that. I don't know what it was, but maybe it was complaints. But somehow this has been a headache ever since it came to our attention, as far as I can tell. People complaining. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But that's, you're starting from there.
I don't see letters in here from the complaints, though. I like to read through them, and I don't.
Well, maybe we'll hear.
Yeah. There, you may see on the planning board's, the project's website, there is material from the previous submission for modification of the permit, which was rather the proposed modification at the time was rather more extensive. It involved new buildings and paving, and so there's a fair amount of commentary from the abutters that is recorded in that. Farther back, I don't know what more we have online for. In fact, I don't think we have the 2016 project online. At least in a quick look for it, I didn't find it. But in any case, we are where we are now. But that's if you're interested in what some of the past concerns were, you'll see a record of there. Of course, we'd like to have this proceeding. We'd like to have a record of any current concerns with the current proposal. Some of the concerns in the past were regarding what was proposed, which is no longer being proposed. So we'll take that with a grain of salt, but I think the board would definitely want to hear any concerns that any of the abutters have here. There are a number of open issues at this point. As you mentioned, you've not yet designed a site plan to show the proposed mitigations, to show some specificity as to where things are going to be located. So that's I gather you kind of left that open because you want to hear what we, the board, and the abutters are most concerned about it, so that you can come up with a design that hopefully will address the concerns. Am I understanding that part of it correctly?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. We didn't kind of want to put the cart before the horse, so to speak. This is a completely different proposal than a year ago when there was a new building and a whole bunch of site work. The site work currently proposed is very limited. It's really identifying a storage area that can be enforced, and then really that mitigation, again, whether that's in the form of fencing or additional plantings or the like. But we didn't want to go kind of full bore and have a plan that doesn't work for abutters and doesn't work for the board. This is kind of a unique situation where we're hoping to meet in the middle, but we didn't want to get too far along before we started collecting some feedback.
All right. I see Justin's hand up.
Yes. So, just for brief, getting the record of what have been complaints filed and any determination by the zoning enforcement officer from those complaints would be useful for us. I completely agree there. As just a reminder for the board, this is also down a private way, so the abutters along the way, I believe, own the way. I think that was a notice of contention the last hearing, which involved changes to the road as well back then, but that's not proposed here. And one thing of note is at the last hearing, many of the abutters had expressed they did not know a way to complain or about the old decision that would allow them opportunities to make those reports if there was something they didn't think should be happening, but they didn't know wasn't supposed to be. So that would be at least useful to see what's gone on since then and what this proposal here today is going to be mitigating of those concerns and the overall decision that we'll eventually make out of this.
Okay, at this point, if nobody on the board has anything further at the moment, certainly doesn't foreclose the opportunity for us to comment and ask questions later, but
There was, I'm just curious about one thing, the question of what the extent of Donahue Lane is, and Fiona had a note about it ends at property, the USA. I'm not sure was. Don't know if it's the Air Force or whoever used to control
Yes,
Wyman Gordon.
Mr. Vice Chair, I included I wanted clarity from the applicant regarding the 208.4 feet of frontage that's there. Just doing a little bit of a research into the deeds and that right of way that's on the plan and who the right of way is deeded to. I think we're going way back to Wyman Gordon days when they were making all sorts of very intense military equipment, etc. That's, if I had to wager, I guess that's where that comes from. But yeah, I think it's more. I think the applicant's counsel will be able to respond to that. It's just something that's come up. The length of the road, just based on the site plans that I've seen that are in the registry, where the iron rods were indicated on those plans, etc. I just think we need clarification. I am not a lawyer, but just from what I've seen and what I've been able to dig up, I think we need to confirm or get at least a response in writing from why the 208.4 feet and that verification of that, because to me it's really not clear.
I guess we'll open this up to public comment. I would like to request that we have some questions coming in on Q&A. I would like, they're identified as being from Ann Foley. I would like, for the record, I would like an address. We'll do, so Ann, if you could, because I don't remember your address. I should know it, but I don't. But anyway, before we get to the Q&A, I would like to open it up to questions from the audience here in the room, other folks on Zoom. Just come up to the mic so that the audience at home can hear you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Airy. I live at 13 Hollywood Drive. Since we moved to Grafton 5 years ago, I make sure to treat each and every neighbor with the trust and respect that I would hope to receive. As any homeowner might agree, this trust and respect, however, can be lost with dishonest and disruptive behavior. After looking at this new application, I've been frustrated we're considering extending hours of operation. Last year when we spoke about this, we did talk, I'm confident, at one of the meetings about 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then limited hours on Saturday. So seeing that we're considering 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday is extremely disheartening, and it just seems unfair. Over the last year, I took it upon myself to randomly log when the company went beyond those hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I logged 14 occurrences from July 23 to January 24. of starting early, ending late, and even working on a Sunday. To consider expanding business hours extremely unfair to residents on Donahue Lane and Hollywood Drive. The next piece, I see a lot of mention of the use of the site as an office light industrial. To my knowledge, office light industrial means just storing trucks and equipment. But since we've been meeting last year, I'll just mention it briefly. There's been rock crushing on site with material from who knows where that can contaminate our soil, air, and even surrounding water supply. Storing unapproved flammable tanks on site, which isn't approved. Encroaching on surrounding wetlands. Operating beyond business hours. And then having a large increase of traffic, which is including backing up large trucks backwards down Donahue Lane. Any of the things that I mentioned, I do have evidence of, video evidence of, and from talking to neighbors. I see mention of traffic volume. When these meetings take place, it's my hope that the town and the applicant truly listen to concerns. And excuse me, I'm getting a little nervous talking about this, and a little frustrated. Not all residents attend these meetings, and not all neighbors are brave enough to advocate for concerns. With this being said, there have been many neighbors who have advocated about concerns as seen in the previous application page. And I'm hopeful everybody on the town planning board can take a look at those previous application complaints. I did mention operating beyond business hours, which has been very loud noise from trucks. And one of my neighbors shared with me that just over a 3-day period, close to 100 truckloads of material were coming and going to the site. And we don't know where that material is coming from, so it could contaminate local soil. I also see mention of renting or subletting the property. This concerns me because if the current owner does not follow the rules, I'm not confident that anybody they rent it out to would follow rules. I see mention in the upcoming application about screening and buffering. I would want to know what this looks like. I would hope current trees remain, since that's currently a decent buffer for at least 6 months of the year. Yeah, so trust has been lost since I moved in 5 years ago, and no buffering will help improve that. What will help is trying to follow current rules, such as hours we hopefully make reasonable, and approved activity that should be on site. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
The question I'm gonna wanna know is whether a contractor's yard use includes trucks, significant numbers of trucks loaded with materials coming and going.
John?
Good evening. John Renzoni, 7 Jordan Terrace. My first question for the board is, I guess, more of a procedural one. The special permit in 2015, was that issued to 18 in 22 or just 22 Donahue Lane?
I don't know the answer to that, but we'll take that as a,
It was
I
issued to
can
22
find out.
Donahue.
Sorry, I don't know off the top of my head, and I should know. I will grab that. 2 seconds. I believe it was 18 and 22, but let me confirm.
If she doesn't have it, I do. So I'm just wondering how 18 got lumped into this. I'm sorry, Bob. I'm just wondering how 18 got lumped into this 2015 special permit, you know, for the modification. I can see doing a modification for 22, but I'm questioning how 18 got lumped into this.
Both lots are owned by the applicant. They're held in common ownership.
But if we don't have a permit for 18, how do we modify it?
And if that's the case, everything that's going on at 18 now, is that in violation of something?
I'd ask the zoning officer.
Well, we've gone with the zoning officer and we've gotten nowhere, because I know what was in the special permit of 2015, and there were blatant violations that he ignored. So I just wanted to bring that point up. And as, you know, I understand he's trying to run his business down there, and I know we've discussed fencing and berming and doing something to kind of modify or rectify, you know, visual sight lines. which I don't think is gonna be effective. Just because the elevation of the houses on Hollywood, they're just up too high. Right now, with the trees, there's a pretty good buffer this time of year. I think the bigger concern would be the noise, you know, because as trucks have been in and out of there quite frequently, when they dump, you know, they bang their tailgates, and there's nothing you're gonna do to buffer that sound out of there. I mean, it just resonates everywhere. You know, so that would be a concern if they were allowed to continue using this yard for stockpiling of basically soils. You know, as a contractor's yard, I can see them, storing some equipment, piping, concrete structures, granite curbing. But when it comes right now, there's just using it basically as a gravel pit, which is a whole different section of the zoning. So, I mean, trucking dirt in and out, I would think would fall more under the guise of a gravel pit instead of a contractor's yard, which again is a concern. I don't know where the board falls on that, but that might be something that we would want to consider. And also the hours. Again, we had discussed this earlier when you wanted a bigger scope of a project. You know, a lot of those neighbors' houses obviously back right up to that property. And they have their Saturdays and Sundays off. So, to have him working there on a Saturday, I think would just be unacceptable if it was loud. It's one of 2 days a week a lot of families have to enjoy their properties. Even working till 7 p.m. on Monday through Friday is, I think, a little extreme, since most construction occurs, in the industry between 7 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. So even if you have trucks coming back to go back to the yard, you're generally done by 5. So I think 7 to 5 Monday through Friday would probably be acceptable. And even at that, people do work from home now. So there still could be some noise issues with some people, but it would be less than cutting into somebody's weekend too. And, coming home at 5 o'clock and still having to listen to equipment running down there for another couple of hours. So, I mean, considering all those, I would be interested to see what the board would consider acceptable for a modification of this permit. And again, looking to make sure that 18 was included in that or not, because that would just bring up a whole nother set of issues.
Yeah, that particular point has to do with the extent to which a modification can expand the scope of a special permit. And I do not know the answer to it, but we will look into that.
Right. Yeah, it would just seem to me that, the only way you could modify a special permit is if there was a special permit. And if the special permit was only for 22 Donahue, then that would be the only thing I think you could modify. I might be wrong. I don't know.
I mean, it could be that a certain degree of expansion of the scope of the permit might be considered a legitimate modification. I don't think any of us can answer that question right now.
Right.
That's the question. That's the question it brings up.
Yeah, because I mean, if that was the case, then if he bought another property on Donahue, he could just keep moving the expanding down. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I do not know the
Right,
extent
okay,
to which
yeah.
a modification can
Right.
expand the scope.
Right. All right.
That may be a question that we need to get town council involved
Right.
in answering,
Right.
if that's the case.
Right. So yeah, until we see a little more and try to work together to try to maybe modify the hours and change some of what's going on down there. Cutting back on the traffic.
Yeah, I think I'm most interested right now in hearing what your concerns are. We're not likely to be able to answer all this right now. But
Well, like I said,
we
my
will-
main
I think it's
concerns are the
important for us,
noise, the traffic, and the hours of operation.
Yep.
And like I said, the noise, I don't think you're gonna be able to rectify. Hours of operation you can, and what would be allowed to be done on the property. What was initially a contractor's yard is now turned into a stockpile yard for, different soils. And, the piles do get quite high at times. And there's equipment down there stacking the material. So,
Okay,
that's my concerns.
excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other from the room here? I don't have any hands raised on Zoom, but I do have several questions from Ann Foley of 45 South Street. So thank you, Ann, for providing us your address. And I think the first question from Ann is, has this property been pulled off the market? My understanding, it was on the market for sale. Do we have an answer to that?
It's still on the market.
It's still on the market. All right, next question from Ann. This is a comment from Ann. I drove by this property. It appears the owner has overstepped. So I don't know that that requires an answer. That's a comment from the public, which is now on the record. Next is the owner still crushing rock and cement illegally? Has our building inspector been out there since the original complaints?
No, we are not.
No, he hasn't been there, or no, you haven't been doing it.
So there were two
doing
questions in there.
Do you have crushing machinery in there?
No.
And the building inspector has not been out there.
Fiona and the building inspector did an enforcement investigation, I believe, last year at some point
Okay, so
for compliance.
that answers those two questions. And the last from Ann, as you all may know, this property was listed for sale after the last time it was presented to the planning board. It appears that it did not sell, and so I think it would be appropriate to review the previous correspondence and complaints that were brought to your board at that time. And that sort of goes back to my comment earlier that, the material from, some of the comments from the previous modification proposal last year are maybe relevant to this proceeding.
Hopefully, on our meeting materials page, we can get a link to that case, to the support for that case.
Yeah, so we should consider at least some of that material as being exhibits for this year.
Yeah, I'd like us to have access to that information.
And had one other comment, which I will defer for the moment because it's not relative to this hearing. So thank you, Ann, for all your questions, and we've either attempted to get them answered, or we've put them into the record for for further consideration as part of this process. Do I have anything else? Any other comments, questions from the public at this point? I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, no hands raised in the room. Anything else from the board at this point? Obviously, there is more work to be done. Hopefully you guys have gotten some information here from the public that will be helpful to you.
Absolutely, and I think hearing these comments was certainly helpful. I will state for the record, the hours of operation proposed were certainly a starting point. We understand their flexibility from the applicant here, what exactly that means, whether it's 7 to 5, we can certainly discuss more, and Saturday 7 to 7 may not be reasonable, but it is a commercial use in an OLI, so to say no Saturday altogether might be a little bit of a stretch for us, just knowing what other commercial business doesn't operate at all on Saturdays, but we are certainly flexible in terms of the hours, whether, the board has suggestions for the record, or you just want us to kind of fine tune our proposal a little bit further. But again, that was a starting point. I think 7 to 5 is probably something we can work with. We'll talk further offline before committing too much, but I think hours are certainly fine. We understand a fence may not mitigate noise completely, and there is a grade change. We're still open to it to provide somewhat of a buffer. Again, I think it's a classic situation of an OLI next to a residential district where we have to kind of meet in the middle. There's no there's no turning off the noise completely, but certainly I think more defined hours and activities will certainly help mitigate that.
If only we could install an impenetrable sound barrier at the zone, at the zone boundary.
No sirens. Just remember that one of our required findings with special permits is compatibility with the abutters and other properties. And so that brings us spot on to this issue.
So I would like to add, the previous application that we submitted as part of the building we were proposing that we pulled did have details on the proposed screen buffer. We wanted to create an open dialogue on a rough idea of what those parameters of that buffer could entail, but based on the comments that I'm hearing with the elevation changes, any type of visual buffer would, allow site work to happen to remove some of that vegetation to create elevation berms, whatnot. So I guess we're kind of looking for a little bit more specificity on the barrier that would be amicable to both the abutters and the board, and
I
point us in
seem
the
to
right direction.
I seem to remember us looking at that fairly carefully, and I think we had a cross-section drawing actually, so that we could see what the sight lines were over the proposed berm. And I seem to recall that, well, feeling it's better than nothing, but it's not really effective, and it's not really gonna get the job done. And
Thank
I
you.
remember the question about
Oh.
the wetlands, or the vegetated property, and trying to keep that there.
Fiona, can you mute Anne, please?
Oh, shit.
Thank you. Oh, little baby.
Not quick enough.
I'm here, but yeah, thank you.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask a question, would it be helpful for me to put into the record the suggestions from the prior application? I do want to, well, firstly, I would like to say thank you to the public for coming forward with their comments. Thank you to the applicant for coming forward and having this dialogue. I do want to kind of caution conflating the two. I know they're very similar, but one was an application with a different proposal that was withdrawn, and this is a new application, and there's similar issues, and I'm happy to enter into the record anything that is requested. I just want to just caution the board that, we don't want to treat them as exactly the same. That's only fair. And I would suggest, if the board is amenable, I can look at the prior site plan that was submitted the last time and see what was proposed for screening and buffering, and we can have a discussion about that. I would have had that prepared ahead of time, but I didn't want to, again, use old material without kind of having this initial discussion.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like with respect to the screening and buffering for visual and noise, that, it's easy enough to understand that there is a concern about that. Not quite so easy to sort of work out a solution to that, but a starting point for thinking about a solution for that could be something roughly similar to what was proposed in the previous project, because there you had a design which may be helpful to inform a discussion about any design that we might come up with for this. It sounds to me like it may take a couple of rounds of, right now we're sort of, we don't know exactly what we're going to see as a proposal, but now that you've heard some of the discussion tonight, between what you've heard tonight and what was proposed the last time around, which, as everybody understands, it was for a different project, but it did have some similarities to this, the current use. So, there may be a starting point, but I'm suspecting that, this is something that may have to be refined through, a couple of rounds of review and comment before we can really sort of feel like we've settled on something. And I don't want to rush things. I want things to take as much time as they need to take to try to get it done right. But yeah, I also understand that with a very vague starting point, you don't necessarily know exactly where to go next. So you kind of have to start with at least something that's reasonably concrete, and then what's good about this, what's bad about this, how can we modify it so in a direction that ultimately will come as nearly as feasible to meeting everybody's needs. Understanding again that it's probably fairly certain that no one can be 100% satisfied with anything that's proposed. But we need to try to converge on something that is the best achievable outcome. That may take a while. Hopefully, we've made some progress tonight in getting started on that.
Understood, Mr. Chairman, and I think we have, and we appreciate the board's time and the abutters and the public's time to come out. We can certainly take a look at that old plan and our hours and start to solidify things a little bit further.
The hours thing is probably a little bit easier to deal with than the noise and control, the visual and noise.
Can I just make a comment though?
Yes.
We had a project come to us recently where they're going to be blasting a hilltop for every day for 3 months, and they've been able to muffle that sound with these big giant rubber mats. So there might be an option for you to put something on the trucks that can stop this loud banging. I don't know what it is, but if that's the number one concern, then there might be some other way of mitigating this noise. People come to us with all kinds of stuff. Loud ducks. Sometimes we can help with things and sometimes we can't, but I don't think this will be a win-win. It'll probably be more like a little bit of a lose-lose, but we look forward to hearing what you come up with.
So it sounds like maybe we're about ready to plan a continuation of this.
Just want to ask Fiona, it would help me if we could get from the zoning officer records of complaints that he received on this property, but really throughout its since the original permit. Okay.
Justin?
And I can work on that.
Justin, your hand is up.
Yes. I don't recall if I read anything on this, but it might be useful to also consider, with regards to this permit, any conditions or descriptions on number of active trips and like types of vehicles on those trips. Which this project, I don't know offhand how we condition that if we can, but I'd to just have a concrete statement of like how often would like a dump truck be going up and down that road, for example, and even without any crushing activity, that might be useful to help at least gauge how much noise would be and impact would be from this.
Okay. Question from the room here.
Hi, this is Steve Airy from 13 Hollywood Drive again. I just wanted to add, I had been emailing with Evan, the town administrator, Evan Broussard, and I still haven't heard back regarding just the previous violations and complaints that we had. So I just wanted to add that to the record. I'm still waiting to hear back. We're waiting to hear back as the abutters, just in terms of previous violations, including the flammable tanks, and the rock crushing and the wetlands and things like that. So, thank you.
So what, go ahead.
I'd like to respond to Mr. Airy. So he prefaced his statement, since the last meeting, there had been several items of things going on in violation. Since last meeting, there has been no rock crushing. There are no flammable tanks on site. They have been removed and documented with the fire department, and a letter has been provided to the town on that. There was a trailer that did back down Donahue Lane that was a subcontractor. That's on us for not being able to enforce that correctly, which will make a procedural means and methods to make sure it doesn't happen again. And, you know, alluding to the fact that this is being used as a gravel pit is incorrect. It's not being used as a quarry, it's a material storage yard. There are spoils of materials that come from a job site, then go back to a job site. Pipe, other materials are stored there, but this is not being, the material there is not being processed. It's not being recycled. It's not being brought in and brought out. It's being just stored and then either, you know, repurposed on site or, you know, moved to another job. So it's not being used as a quarry per se.
But is that included in the definition of a contractor's yard, which I asked earlier, and we'll have to see if anybody can figure out how to answer it.
I do believe, Mr. Vice Chair, that the definition includes equipment, supplies, materials, and parking of wheeled vehicles, is how the bylaw reads.
Well,
Yeah,
material.
premises used by a contractor, subcontractor
Okay.
for storage of equipment, supplies, materials, and parking of wheeled equipment.
So, thinking in terms of scheduling the next session of this hearing, our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. If you think you can make some progress and come back for a fruitful discussion in 2 weeks, great. If you would like more time to work on this, it's really, you know, kind of up to you as how much time you want before we come back for another hearing.
We'll discuss.
Well, we need to give a date now.
Yeah, so we will need to set a date.
I think we'd respectfully request a continuance for 2 weeks.
Okay. So that would be to July 22nd. We have a form here you can fill out to provide us with a written request to continue the hearing. And assuming that it's going to be for July 22nd, a motion to grant the to-be-received written request would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the board grant the applicant's written request, which is being written as we speak, to continue this hearing to Monday, July 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Discussion of the motion. Hearing none. Ms. Bresnahan.
Aye.
Mr. Hessinger.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We will see you back here in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you.
And thank you, and thanks to all the members of the public here who have, you know, come to participate in this. It's your participation is essential here. Moving on. We have a request for project plan review at Jumbo's Path at the Tufts Vet School.
Want me to read the notice?
So yes, it would be appropriate.
The Grafton Planning Board will hold a public meeting on Monday, July 8th, 2024, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in the Conference Room A at the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, to consider an application for project plan review for the Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine at Tufts University, pursuant to the Section 9.6.1.2 of the Grafton zoning bylaw for the installation of a transitional classroom located on the parking lot adjacent to the large animal hospital on property located at Jumbo's Path, shown as Grafton's Assessor Map 21, Lot 1A. Said property is located in Office Light Industrial and Campus Development Overlay Zoning District. The applicant owner is trustees of Tufts College, aka Tufts University. Copies of the application and plan are available for public inspection at the Planning Department during regular business hours or on the Town of Grafton website on the Planning Department Development Projects webpage.
Thank you. Fiona, do you want to introduce this, and then we'll let the applicants have some time?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the applicant is Tufts, as Andrea just mentioned. They are proposing a one-story modular classroom that will be roughly 5,500 square feet on the parking lot adjacent to the large animal hospital. This is very similar to a recent application that was before our board not too long ago for the rounds rooms, which also were positioned in an existing parking lot. Because of the positioning and location of this modular building, on an existing lot. There's minimal effect on, and there's zero effect really on any dimensional requirements, and very minimal effect on stormwater or any associated site plan review criteria that we typically look at. The biggest point of discussion, and what I'm assuming we'd like to delve into a little bit more this evening, is the fact that the building will be taking up 28 spaces from the overall campus inventory. But in response to that, the applicant is proposing to build a 51 space parking lot in the southwest quadrant of campus. I would like to make it known for the board, after my review of the zoning, as well as discussions with the zoning enforcement officer / building inspector, there's no limitation spatially on if the parking lot is in the southwest quadrant. Tufts often has parking lots servicing, multiple uses and facilities. The Graves Engineering did not come back with anything of concern. And other than that, I think I probably would turn it over to the applicant at this stage, but I'm happy to answer any questions from the board before then about my memo. But we do obviously like to see and thank the applicant for their attempt to make up the spaces that they're taking away and then add some. So we'll have a surplus of 23 spaces actually at the end of this application process. And with that, I can answer any questions, or we can just turn it right over to the applicant, whatever you prefer, Mr. Chair.
I think the applicants we'd like to hear from the applicants at this point.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman. I'm Greg O'Connor, GJO Associates Architects. And I believe that we also have Alistair Cribb, the Dean at Tufts, online, and I know he would like to make a brief little presentation to you folks to explain the project. So if I could kind of turn this over to him at this point, we'll let Alistair give the presentation that he has.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. It's Alistair Cribb. As Chris said, I'm the Dean at Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine. The background to this project is that we are expanding our class size. There's a large demand for veterinarians, and so we are increasing our admitting class in the fall, and then we'll keep that increased number, which will be approximately 150 students per year moving forward. We are planning new permanent structures, but that's going to take a few years to be completed. So we need to add another large classroom to handle the increased student numbers because we have 3 current classrooms dedicated to the veterinary program. One of those only does 100 students, one does just under 130, and the other one is a large auditorium, does 175 roughly students. So that's why we have this transitional classroom, why it's modular. It's not intended to be a permanent structure, but we assume we'll be there at least 3 and probably 5 years. As already been mentioned, it will go on a parking lot. So we are adding additional parking now, and we continue to add more parking as the class sizes go up into the future as well. This will be a standard educational modular classroom. You see them a lot in high schools or public schools. They're roughly a 10-foot high building. They're on a elevated foundation, and it's fairly standard, produced by a company here called Triumph. So that's sort of the background and the history of why we're asking for this permission to install this modular classroom.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, Ed Stratford, Executive Associate Dean with Cummings School, just to introduce myself. So.
Okay.
Yep.
I think Alistair covered it fairly well. At this point, I think open it for questions. And as he said, as I believe Fiona said, this is similar to what we did a couple months ago with the Rounds building. This one happens to just be a little bit larger and taking more parking, so we had to replicate some parking.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board?
Well, let's see. Fiona, do we have anything actually outstanding to resolve before we close the hearing?
I'm doing one last quick review of Graves just to make sure I saw it early. I reviewed it earlier. We typically do like to have a response in the record that basically the loop is closed for all peer review comments. But Graves really didn't seem to have anything that stood out. There was actually, I'm sorry, comment number 3 showing a grade change of 5%. They didn't have an issue with the parking area's location, but typically anything more than 5% is flagged by Graves. So just something that the applicant should be aware of.
But it's not something that needs to be changed in what we have?
No, I don't believe so, no.
Yes, it's something we don't need to change, not.
Yes, sorry. and
a lot of people, including my wife, do that all the time.
Yeah, sometimes yeah, sorry about that. But yes, and I had a couple of comments in my memo that I would like addressed at some point. You know, we can answer those in real time after the board is done answering their questions, or if they want to issue a formal written response. That is usually how we do it. It's kind of like a cataloged conversation that's uploaded into the record, so we can make sure in writing that everything is closed, the loop is closed on everything. But I see Justin's hand is up, so I can go back to my memo once he's done.
You can go first, I don't mind.
I might be a while.
Okay. So my only question is on timing of constructing the new lot and this temporary space. If we lose the 28 spots, is there going to be a capacity concern with regards to parking if we lose them before the new lot is built?
So we're trying to get the new lot built as well for this fall. The way the classes start, we've actually staggered the start, or maybe I shouldn't say staggered, that's incorrect. We've made a permanent change in the start date for this new class that's starting. We're making some curricular changes, etc. So we will only have 2 classes starting in mid-August. And then the 4th year already in the clinics, and they're part on campus and part elsewhere. The new class coming in will not start until the beginning of September. So, you know, there will be some sequencing. We do have some temporary parking areas that we could use if we need to, but the intent is to have parking available as the class expands.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, if the board doesn't have any other questions, I'll just go through my questions and then we can answer them. Some of them there is a little bit of overlap with some commentary in Graves memo, but I just wanted to ask the applicant. So this is going to be really an interim measure. So we have an knowledge at this time of how long this is going to be fixed to the parking lot?
No, so it will be dependent on how long it takes us to construct the new permanent classrooms. You know, if I would be honest, I'd say best case scenario would be 3 years. And I suspect it's going to be at least 5. That would be, but my desire is to have the new ones completed within 3, but I think realistically, the way construction goes, it'd be hard to hit that target.
Mm-hmm. I asked because we'll need to make some finding in our permit, and it might affect, condition should the board approve it. So I just wanted to be clear for the record. So perfect. Thank you so much. Just a suggestion that for the ancillary parking lot and some signage might want to be considered if you're taking up spaces in the what would typically be, allocated to the large animal hospital and then replicating them elsewhere. Signage might be considered. It's not
Yeah.
required, but
So it's probably worthwhile clarifying that. It is not parking lot that is used by clients in the large animal hospital. It simply is adjacent to the building in which the large animal hospital sits. And so somebody just called it the large animal hospital parking lot. It's not actually people who work in the large animal hospital who tend to park in there. We're actually going to change and signpost all the parking lots more clearly and say this parking lot, right now we have students, faculty, staff, and client. We're actually going to signpost parking as this is for students in year 1, this is for students in year 2, this is for students in year 3. And so we're going to be actually re-signing the whole site other than for the client parking lots.
oh, great. Okay, wonderful. That's helpful to know. I did have a couple other comments I'll try and get through quickly. One of the things, and Graves did flag this as well, this is probably my last major comment, is there's a notation on the parking plan that more detailed plans will be submitted during the building permit process once that time is reached. We typically like to have that level of detail approved by the planning board prior to securing a building permit, so we can understand and have Graves peer review with those details, because that will naturally be the first thing that the building department asks us is,
Right. And so the reason you didn't get it already was we were getting the design. And we're trying to avoid having to put in a retaining wall just where that is located. So we've got a design that doesn't require retaining wall, and Ed Stafford may want to add some more details, but we'll be able to provide that. We have the plan now.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. If you could, if we could enter that into the record and just make sure that that is there and included in the board's approval before we move forward, that would be a request of myself and Graves. Other than that, sorry.
I was just going to get Ed to confirm what I said. I've been away. I'm actually up in Canada right now, so that's why I'm zooming in. But Ed, I had that correct, right?
Yeah, I was going to turn it over to Greg because I think he knows the status of the design.
Yeah, so Fiona, a lot of what that comment pertained to is the actual modular structure itself. That we literally just entered in contract with the company producing that structure for us, and they are actually working on the drawings for that structure. They're more building drawings as opposed to site drawings. We actually did already submit a supplemental site drawing about a week ago to you folks for the parking and the modular area.
You've submitted I have from exhibit 5 site plan for new parking lot submitted on June 27th. You submitted something since then?
There was the grading and drainage plan and the utility connection plan for the modular structure. And Graves got those, and he included that in his review.
Right. Fiona's asking about the parking lot on the site 19. So we do have that as well.
Yeah, yes, that's correct. I'm focused more on the parking lot. There was I'll pull it up quickly.
Yeah, the new parking lot, not the parking lot where the modular is going. We'll get that to you. Yeah.
This is the supplemental.
Are you seeing my?
Is it number 5 there?
Number 5, and then I'll share. I know. So, just this notation here.
Yeah, so that is new parking lot.
Yes, so it just said, final paving, grading, and drainage plan should be submitted later on, but those details are something that this board likes to have peer reviewed and included in our approval. So that was my only comment, Greg.
Okay.
Alrighty. And And that's really all I have. So if we could just get that information in and upload it to the record, I don't have any other concerns, and neither does Graves, which is good.
I think my question was, if you have material still that needs to be entered in the record, we can't close the hearing, because the record closes with a hearing. Right?
Right. No, I would recommend getting those details, which Alistair has mentioned are already basically finalized before we close, to make sure that Graves can review them from an engineering perspective and give it the okay.
Yeah. So we have some information yet to be entered into the record. No major outstanding issues. It's more, we know, and information either already exists or will exist shortly to be submitted to us.
Yep.
So is that right, Fiona?
Okay.
There's some documentation yet to be put on the record, but other than that, we have everything all squared away.
Yes. Just that we just need the added details for the parking lot.
So, Alistair, you have your hand up?
Well, I just wanted to clarify that and make sure I understood. So, we're looking at this then as the modular in the parking lot basically as one unit for approval is what I'm
Yep.
hearing, as opposed to approving the modular now and the parking at a later date. We're just looking at it all as one piece. So that's what I'm hearing? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
That's the way the application is structured, and that's the way
Yeah.
I think we're all, discussing it. So, having said all that, it sounds like we need to keep the hearing open for a couple of weeks, but at that point, we should have everything in hand so that staff can proceed to draft a decision.
You don't think that this is where staff could get a head start on the decision? Well, Fiona, what do you think?
If
Yes, I will. I'll work on that. I mean, again, we are obviously swamped, but I will put in an effort to do what I can.
It sounds like there isn't a whole lot of extra time for Tufts on this, and
so
want to try to help if we can.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Understood. Yes, I will do that.
So,
Yeah.
being
Very
mindful,
much appreciate that.
being mindful of staff resources being finite, to the extent that staff can have a draft decision available for consideration after we close the hearing 2 weeks from tonight. Yeah. Again, I don't want to put too much pressure on staff, but I think it sounds like Fiona says that she'll do the best that she can.
If you can, you don't have to, but if you can.
Barring unforeseen circumstances, it should be possible.
So it sounds like a continuation would be in order. I have the form here to request a continuance. And it's my understanding that the request will be for a continuation to July 22nd.
At 7:30.
At 7:30 p.m. So a motion to grant the request for continuance would be in order.
I so move.
I second.
Moved and seconded that the board grant the applicant's written request to continue this hearing to Monday, July 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Ms. Bresnahan.
Aye.
Mr. Hassing.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We look forward to wrapping this up as quickly as we can. And now, we have one more hearing to work on, as previously noted. Public hearing item C, 17 to 27 Upton Street, has been continued to July 22nd.
This is Jumbo's Path.
I know.
Well, let's turn our West Barbara Road and Jumbo's Path.
I'm interested in
So we'll give these gentlemen a moment to
just that,
take care of the paperwork here.
how you managed to not mess yourself up with Zoom.
Thank you. So, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Great. And finally, we have a continuation of the public hearing for a request for plan approval at 5 Millennium Drive.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mark Bobrowski for the applicant. My office is in Concord at Damon Mill Square.
Good evening, Mark. Fiona, did you want to have anything to lead this off with?
Sure. So I've been corresponding back and forth with the applicant and their team, trying to close the loop on some items. We're still kind of waiting on some things, and the applicant will be able to speak to that this evening and kind of talk to the board and talk through some of the outstanding concerns. We have Maureen here from Bowman to speak to some of the feedback that was received regarding traffic and intersection improvements specifically that we'll get to. I am personally working on getting a final confirmation from fire that everything is checks out on their end. In addition to that and the traffic that we'll be discussing shortly, we are waiting for, I believe, one final letter from Graves Engineering.
Sorry.
One final comment letter from Graves Engineering that comment 7 in their review was addressed, and then I did have some additional things that I had followed up with, including wanting to add crosswalks, internal crosswalks from the buildings to the amenity spaces, including the dog park. The applicant has agreed to incorporate that. I believe that there will be a request to review some of the changes and see how we can work with them to expedite that process. But without droning on too long, I do want to turn it over to, I don't know who's in the room. And here on behalf of, okay, there we go. Sorry. But I see Mark's online. I see Maureen, and then the traffic peer review for the team and Bill. So with that being said, I think we'll turn it over to them and go from there.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps the best way to proceed is to have our project engineer, Phil Cordero, give you an update.
All right. Yes, Phil Cadero's not here today, so Paul Matos from Allen & Major is here.
Thank you.
Welcome. So we originally submitted plans to Graves, and we have modified the plans since his review comments based on Conservation Commission meeting. And basically the changes that we did make to satisfy some of the Conservation Commission's concern with us working close to the 25-foot buffer zone is that we took the entrance road coming in, and after we passed the median island that's in that boulevard style entrance, we kicked the road towards the west a little bit towards the building, where we gained a little bit more separation to the wetland buffer zone, the 25-foot no disturb zone. And we also relocated the sidewalk that was typically located on the easterly side of that boulevard style driveway towards Millennium Drive to the west side of the road. And in doing so, we increased the separations to the 25-foot no disturb zone by anywhere from 5 to 13 feet to accommodate concerns from the Conservation Commission. And we also shifted the stormwater management system number 1 that's located adjacent to building 1 further westerly away from the proposed retaining wall, because we've been having communications with some of the retaining wall designers, and we had to try to get it outside of that zone of influence for the geogrid that would support the retaining wall. That's still being designed, but the shift that we did of 13 feet were well outside that zone of influence. So those are the minor modifications that we did on the set of revised plans that Grave did review, and basically all the comments were addressed except for comment number 1, where he's requiring us to comply with 80% TSS removal prior to infiltration. And when we had submitted the TSS calculations, we used a very conservative number of 50% TSS removal for hydrodynamic separators to water quality structures. And in discussions with Graves, we communicated that he's allowing us to use the manufacturer numbers, and those numbers were reported in the drainage calculations, and those are anywhere from 93% to 98% TSS removal. So we'll definitely be in compliance with that, and there's been email communications going back and forth, and I believe Fiona was on those correspondence, so we're just hoping to get the sign-off letter from Graves.
Okay. Anything else?
Certainly. Good evening. Bill Lovett with Claremont. So thank you, Paul, for the update with regard to the civil drawings. Just a few other kind of housekeeping items with regard to some of the other items. As Paul mentioned, we should have the Graves comments satisfied with regard to these emails that were going back and forth. So I would hope that within the next 48 hours we'd be able to close that that item out. Fiona mentioned that we're adding some crosswalks from the amenity area across the street to the dog walk, so that will be taken care of. Fiona's looking at the just confirmation from the fire department with regard to turn and their concerns. We did submit today a waiver request for some setbacks when we shifted the driveway from the eastern portion of the property to the western portion of the property. Sorry, from the west to the east, to help reduce the blasting that affected some of the setbacks that we had relief on in the original plan that we had approved for the special permit. So that permit or that waiver request was submitted today. Otherwise, I think we're exploring. There was a comment with regard to fencing around a dumpster enclosure. Apparently there's a concern with regard to the use of wood. So we may use wood, but we'll also explore some alternatives with regard to dumpster enclosures. Otherwise, I think we're fairly close. We also did confirm the parking count, that we're in excess of the required parking. That's all I have.
Okay. Anything else on behalf of the applicant at this point? Fiona, did you have anything?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're going to need to talk through comments that were uploaded to the record regarding the intersection improvements and fair share contribution. Hoping to have that dialogue this evening. We have Maureen here, who's our peer on behalf of Bowman, who's our peer reviewer, who will be able to talk to this a lot more intelligently than I can. But Maureen, if you want to, just let me know if you want me to pull up an exhibit in particular. I'm happy to do that.
Sure. I'll give a quick overview just of where we're at with the traffic peer review comments and those two. We have two lingering comments that we tried to work out amongst everyone last week, but with the holiday, I think coordination got cut a little bit short. I don't know if there's anyone else from the applicant's team that can help speak to these two remaining comments tonight, but basically we've had 2 rounds of traffic peer review comments thus far. We've really looked at their traffic impact study from beginning to end, every part of it, from how they collect the data, how they analyze the data, and then the ultimate recommendations from the report. We've come to an agreement on the vast majority of our peer review comments. Those have all been addressed. There are 2 what we'll call lingering comments in our peer review memo for off-site improvements at the Pine Street and Route 30 intersection. One was a recommendation to implement some interim or short-term improvements for signing and striping, just to make the intersection a little more visible from what it is today, making some of the signs compliant with current manual of uniform traffic control devices standards, kind of in the interim. And then longer term, based on the traffic analysis, we had requested the applicant form a traffic signal warrant, which they had done, and had also asked, based on the level of service, particularly for the Pine Street approach to the intersection, for future conditions with it operating poorly, and some increased delays from what it is today and in the future, to make a fair share contribution towards future traffic signal improvements at this location based on their relative impact. So we were hoping to coordinate all this and discuss with Fiona and DPW last week based on the applicant completing kind of an analysis of fair share contribution and proposing a amount to present to the town. Unfortunately, with the holiday, I think that got cut a bit short. But if there is anyone available to present tonight, I think we'd be open to discussing that further. And then I don't know if it's something that needs to be continued, but we'll certainly be happy to look at it and provide our recommendation on that proposed contribution.
Anything to follow up on that? If not, then members, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I probably mentioned it before. I'm quite concerned with that Pine Street and Route 30 intersection. I don't think we've ever put a light in where it wasn't on a state road and the state participated in most of the cost. So I'm not sure how to look at this, and I'm not sure that we're the experts. I would like us to have to include the appropriate people from the town to that do know what putting a light in there means and what the town could do and couldn't do and so on. So I think that would be very helpful to me as before we try to come to closure. I just, you know, they're already looking at another override at the next spring? They're talking about it?
Possibly.
Well, it was mentioned in the Finance Committee
Yep.
report to town meeting. So, there isn't a lot of money in the town budget to be putting a light there. And I think that's a problem. And so, we need to try to understand a lot better. I need to try to understand a lot better about the costs and the opportunities and how all that will work.
All right. Fiona?
So just to answer Vice Chair's question, so when this was brought to our attention, I had a conversation with the town engineer and the DPW director who drove to the site. Oh, excuse me. Obviously, we didn't have exact numbers and like a cost estimate write up, but from a scan of existing conditions, the DPW director verified that the improvements that were listed by Bowman were warranted, considering the current state as well as the anticipated impact. And there was an estimate put out there for the fair share contribution in the amount of $100,000, which granted we didn't have finalized our formal write up to that effect, but it was something that based on his professional expertise, he suggested, and then that would be what we could kind of start the dialogue with. And I know the applicant did have some concerns about that. And one thing that was discussed on Zoom between the engineers was, if the applicant would provide some data to us for what they can do and what they cannot, and kind of some additional data for Bowman to be able to review, that would help us in determining kind of how we can arrive at a consensus here, because it really needs to be something that professional, traffic professionals need to arrive at. But we want to have this dialogue with the board now, because it seems like we can't really come to we need more direction from the board at this time.
I was thinking that I might want us to be including the town administrator in the conversation, since he's the one that has to make a budget.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows better than anyone else. So anyway, the 100K is forward looking to eventually when a light is put in there, right? that's not involved with the near-term modifications, markings and whatnot that we talked
Correct.
about. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, and just to speak to, sorry, this is Maureen from Bowman. The fair share contribution, it's not, it's based on relative impact for the proposed development. So there obviously are some other developments going on in this area that would also impact this intersection. So there's been similar proposals for those projects as well as we get through the review process. So this is the contribution based on this specific project. It's not an all-encompassing contribution towards a signal. It's based on relative impact. Just wanted to clarify.
Mr. Chairman, so this is Mark Bobrowski. I think Maureen's statement just now is the answer. I think we need to assess what fraction of total costs we are causing, and then we will make a number available to the board for discussion purposes. I don't think that's that hard. I would imagine that other projects that are in the pipeline, there are build analyses for 7 years out, 8 years out, as traffic engineers do. And we have one as well. So I think we can total up all that, come up with an answer for you.
Yeah. My problem is, if I'm gonna vote to approve this, I don't wanna be in the position of knowing that I'm pushing the town towards a financial problem at that intersection. Because it's, as I say, it's unique in Grafton to have this situation. So anyway, my concern. We'll talk some more, I think.
Sounds to me like there's a little bit more work to be done on this in order to come up with some final proposals. But is there anything else? Excuse me.
I think we also would like to comment at least on the work request at Pine Street and Route 30 for the striping.
Mark, I'm happy to take that.
Okay, go ahead, Bill.
So one of the two comments was with regard to restriping and signage. I don't think it's any secret, right, that looks like that work needs to be done in short order. We are not close to any type of building permit application at this point. So if this is an area of concern, then I don't think that, just from a timing standpoint, from the town's perspective, we should be relying on us. We have a lot of fees associated with this project. We have to finance this project. There's a long road between today and us putting a shovel in the ground. So we have a lot of things to work through on the economic side of this. So that's right up front.
Okay. Anything else from the board at this point?
I have a quick question. It's probably obvious, but I mean, when you contacted the MTBA about this project, did they have any concerns at all?
With regard to
I'm thinking of the blasting, but I don't, anything else.
No, we're outside of the zone of influence from the of the
Talk to them,
MBTA.
it's fine.
Yeah, in fact, we're working right now with the MBTA on a licensing agreement because we need from them. So we have, I'm glad you asked that question. We have made our application, or the town's made its application to MassWorks for a grant to assist. We thought it was going to be 100%, but it's about 80% of the application that will fund the balance of that based on the application. But we're working with with MBTA currently to get access to be able to build and work on their property and ultimately have an easement across their property to get from the path to the train station.
So, Fiona, do you have a sense of what remains to be done before we can close on this?
Yes, I mean the biggest, loop that needs to be closed is coming to a consensus about the two issues that are in the traffic memo that we just discussed, and we can work on that. The other items are really more low hanging fruit, like just a final confirmation from Grafton Fire, the sidewalk, the internal sidewalks that Bill just discussed. Like those are semi minor items that we can work on as well. But I think the biggest thing is the fair share contribution and the intersection improvements, and kind of getting some data from the applicant to quantify that, and then having Bowman be able to peer review that data. I don't have any other than that and what we've discussed this evening. There's nothing else that's on my radar that's cause for concern. And after reviewing, which the board has already done as well, but reviewing Graves peer review reports, nothing else is standing out. As Phil mentioned, they did some modifications to the site to reduce the retaining wall's impact on the wetlands. So I think that's just a matter of tying up what we discussed tonight.
All right, before I go any farther, I'd like to ask if there's any comments from the public who may be in attendance here. Or out there. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. No one's raising their hands here in the meeting room. Bill, you had something?
Just one last thing. I believe that we've put together the data with regard to the proportionate share. So we'd love to be able to schedule, we'll work through Fiona to schedule a meeting in the next, couple of days to finalize that.
Would I be correct in thinking that 2 weeks from now we ought to have everything wrapped up? Hopefully, the way things look.
That would be wonderful.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd agree with that.
Well, in that case, if there's nothing more that we need to discuss this evening, I have the paperwork here for a continuation request. And it sounds like we are headed towards a continuation of this hearing to Monday, July 22nd at 7:30 p.m. A motion to that effect?
Who's making that motion?
Oh, thank you. Yes. I move that we grant the applicant's written request to continue this hearing until July 22nd at 7:30.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Mrs. Bresnahan?
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We will see you in 2 weeks, and with any luck, we'll be able to consider this all wrapped up at that point. Well, except for the actual drafting of a decision.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Mr. Chairman.
And thank you all for attending and participating and making some progress towards getting this done. And with that, that completes our public hearing schedule for this evening. Are there any other items which may lawfully come before the board? Hearing none.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. Ms. Bresnahan?
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger? Mr. Wood?
Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We are adjourned. Good night.